Lu Zhou looked at Fan Shouwen. He said, Lung Luo, I've given you many chances. Since you don't cherish them, don't blame me for being cruel. Fan Shouwen forced himself to stand up. The binding cage kept him restrained like a band-tightening spell. He said, Old senior, there's no need to waste your breath. Since I've been defeated, I deserve to die. Lu Zhou shook his head and said, A person with an 8-leaf avatar is willing to keep a secret for someone in the palace. Is this person worth throwing your life away? At this point, he did not think he would be able to discover the mastermind's identity. It must be one hell of a secret for an elite with an 8-leaf avatar to guard this secret with his life. He would have to find another way to investigate this matter. Fan Shouwen said, At this point, it's meaningless to exchange any words. Lu Zhou shook his head. His manner was as cold as ever. At this moment, a system notification suddenly popped up. Ding! Ming-Shir-In has killed a target in the nascent divinity tribulation realm. Rewarded 1,000 merit points. Lu Zhou did not show any emotion when he heard this. He only shook his head as he said, The Dark Knight, Qinzhongyi, do you think he's still alive? Fan Shouwen thought Lu Zhou was trying to attack him psychologically. He turned away with a scoff. Qinzhongyi is highly skilled. Although Ming-Shir-In is very powerful, he shouldn't have left the Great Hall. The wider the space, the more advantageous it is for Qinzhongyi. You've killed Li Qing, and Qinzhongyi will kill Ming-Shir-In. I guess we're even now. Lu Yuaner could not stand to hear these words, and cursed instantly. Bullsh**T. Anyone can brag. Brag. Fan Shouwen chuckled before he said with his hoarse voice, Little girl, the evil sky pavilion is indeed very powerful, but has turned you into a frog in the well. When I traveled under the heavens unfettered many years ago, even your master couldn't stop me. HM, why are you glaring at me? Little Yuaner turned away huffily and suddenly looked outside the Great Hall. Although Fan Shouwen was restrained by the binding cage, it did not stop him from turning his head when he discovered Duanmu Sheng, Yi Qianxin, and the female cultivators from the derived Moon Palace were looking outside the Great Hall as well. Ming-Shir-In had appeared at the entrance, and the light shone on him as he slowly walked in. It was clear that he was in a battered state. His robes were stained red with blood. He held a short knife in his right hand that was still dripping with blood. Upon seeing this, Fan Shouwen frowned, and his heart began to race. He wanted to make a move, but the Overlord's spear's tip suddenly appeared in his line of sight. If you want to die, one thrust in the spear is all it takes to kill you, Duanmu Sheng said threateningly. At this moment, Ming-Shir-In had walked into the Great Hall, looking slightly exhausted. However, a hint of glee could be seen on his face. He was clearly pleased by his victory. He placed the knife on the floor and said, I didn't kill Qinzhongyi on purpose. He was hiding a top Earth-grade weapon. I had no choice but to kill him out of self-defense. Fan Shouwen's eye twitched uncontrollably. He had thought Qin Yonghe's victory was certain. After all, Ming-Shir-In had no weapon, and he had not sprouted any leaves on his avatar yet. On the other hand, Qinzhongyi was the Dark Knight with the most profound cultivation base. Qinzhongyi had a peak 3-leaf avatar, and he possessed an Earth-grade weapon. He began to cough violently, unable to accept this outcome. His surging qi and blood brought him unbearable pain. The female cultivators from the derived Moon Palace were greatly shocked. They did not know the evil sky pavilion was this powerful. The derived Moon Palace was too insignificant in comparison. After listening to Ming-Shir-Yin's report, Lu Zhou merely offered a small praise. Not bad. Ming-Shir-In was delighted to hear this. His expression brightened as he said, Master, this Earth-grade weapon is extremely precious. I'd like to refine it. Fan Shouwen roared, You dare! Little Yuaner quickly retorted, Really? You're trying to intimidate us at this stage. Qinzhongyi, who had died, would turn in his grave if he knew his weapon was going to be refined. However, Ming-Shir-In could not have cared less about these things. I asked for your permission, Master. How could Fan Shouwen not feel furious? These people wanted to refine his dead subordinate's weapon after all. However, as the loser, he had no say in this. If he had been defeated by those from a noble path, he could still mock them However, this was the Evil Sky Pavilion. Even if Mingshi-In ripped out Qinzhongyi's tendons and bones, there was nothing he could say about it. He could only glare at these people helplessly. He tried to circulate his primal chi again, but he discovered his dantian was still empty. Fan Xiuwen was a knowledgeable man. He had traveled far and wide, and had seen all kinds of cultivation methods and techniques from different sections. However, this was his first time encountering the binding cage technique. The more unfamiliar he was with something, the more difficult it would be for him to defend against it. Zhou sat with his back straight on his throne as he looked at the knife. Finally, he said emotionlessly, "Bring it to me?" "Yes, master." Mingshi-In was inwardly delighted. He picked up the precious knife with both his hands and presented it to Zhou reverently before obediently retreating to the side. Heaven-grade weapons were extremely rare. Many cultivators would not even encounter one in their entire lives. Moreover, even if they possess a heaven-grade weapon, if their cultivation bases were not, at least in the nascent divinity tribulation realm, they would not dare to simply disclose it. After all, it would be difficult for them to guard against stronger cultivators who coveted the heaven-grade weapons. Therefore, many cultivators were content with possessing a top earth-grade weapon. It could be tempered and refined into a heaven-grade weapon in the future. However, it was extremely difficult to refine a weapon. It was impossible to refine weapons without spending several decades on the process. Even then, many cultivators were willing to try it since the lure of a heaven-grade weapon was too strong. Zhou picked up the knife and appraised it. The knife's design was not the best. In fact, it was slightly on the uglier side. He raised his right hand, and Unnamed appeared out of thin air in his hand. He used Unnamed to slash across the knife. Everyone else was stunned and baffled by Zhou's action. From their perspective, it only seemed like Zhou had drawn his finger across the knife. The knife was a top earth-grade weapon after all. They thought it was preposterous that Zhou was trying to break the knife with his bare hands. Although all of them shared the same thought, naturally, none of them dared to verbalize their thoughts. Fan Xiuwen said in his deep voice, as expected of a villain, coveting the possession of a dead man, "How do you sleep at night?" Mingshi-In rolled his eyes and said, "If we live by your standards, those who fight over weapons in the cultivation world won't be able to sleep at night." Fan Xiuwen could not retort. It was indeed common for people to fight over weapons. Zhou shook his head after inspecting the weapon. Previously, when he had used Unnamed against the male and female twin swords, the twin swords were unscathed. Currently, this peak earth-grade weapon was also unaffected by Unnamed. Did this mean Unnamed was not even at the earth-grade level? Zhou tossed the knife away, and Mingshi-In caught immediately. Mingshi-In was positively delighted. However, as soon as he caught the knife, he heard a soft crack before he saw a fine crack appearing on the knife. It did not take long before it snapped into two and fell to ground. Mingshi-In was as motionless as a wooden chicken as he stared at the broken knife with a stunned expression. The knife was cleanly cut like tofu. Fan Xiuwen frowned. Although Zhou's expression was calm, he was inwardly shocked. It seemed like Unnamed was stronger than a peak earth-grade weapon. It was highly like that Unnamed was a heaven-grade weapon. A heaven-grade weapon that could transform into different forms was definitely a priceless treasure. Mingshi-Yin's stunned expression quickly turned bitter. He had gone through great pains to obtain this weapon, but his master had broken it with his bare hands. He lamented inwardly, "Master, didn't I work hard enough?" Finally, Zhou said, "A mere earth-grade weapon isn't fit to enter my evil sky pavilion." Mingshi-In was stunned speechless. A mere earth-grade weapon. Then, did this mean there were better weapons in the Evil Sky Pavilion? Little Yuaner giggled and said, "Fourth senior brother, look at the weapon in third senior brother's hands. That's the Overlord Spear. Isn't it cool?" Third senior brother fought against two opponents with that weapon. Mingshi-In turned to look at the Overlord Spear in Duanmu Sheng's hands. The Overlord Spear's length and the dragon carving that was wrapped around the shaft gave it a sophisticated air. He recalled when the 10 elites laid siege to Golden Court Mountain, he had urged Duanmu Sheng to leave, but Duanmu Sheng would not leave because the Overlord Spear was here. He did not expect his master to give such a precious weapon to Duanmu Shang. His heart felt heavy as he thought about how unfair it was. Compared to a heaven-grade weapon, a peak Earth-grade weapon was truly similar to trash. Master, your majestic power knows no bounds. This garbage can't even take one hit from you. It's clearly a crude weapon. Ming-Shi finally said before he kicked the broken knife away. After kicking the knife away, he smiled ingratiatingly before he asked, Master, when will I be able to possess a weapon suitable for me? Zhou stroked his beard and said, Carry out your duties well. Ming-Shi was greatly delighted by these words. They were equivalent to a promise that he would be given a heaven-grade weapon. Although his master did not specify when he would be given the weapon, his master was a man of his word. He did not hesitate as he fell to his knees and kowtowed sincerely. Thank you, master. I'll continue to work hard, and I won't let you down. Loyalty plus 2%. Zhou nodded lightly. This was much better compared to when he had just transmigrated here. Ming-Shi loyalty was much more stable compared to before. As expected, it was difficult to just rely on intimidation and brute strength to obtain someone's loyalty. At this moment, 2 female cultivators from Derived Moon Palace cried out in unison, Palace Master, are you all right? 2 female cultivators from the Derived Moon Palace helped Yi Qianxin, who had fainted, up. Little Yuan quickly ran over and briefly examined Yi Qianxin. She said, She's fine. You'll scare my master by making a fuss like this. Ming-Shi was speechless. Little Junior's sister mentions master at every opportunity. I certainly can't compare to her. Zhou waved his arm and said, Lock her in the South Pavilion, so she can continue reflecting on her actions. Yes, master. Little Yuan brought Yi Qianxin and the 2 female cultivators from Derived Moon Palace out of the Evil Sky Pavilion's Great Hall. At the same time, Zhou discovered that Yi Qianxin's hatred was decreasing rapidly. It seemed like her hatred that stemmed from the incident in Fish Dragon Village was disappearing. Initially, he only wanted Fan Xiuwen to explain the reason behind the incident. However, Fang Xiuwen's stubborn manner of concealing the incident only piqued his interest. Moreover, this matter was also highly likely to be related to his missing memories. After mulling over for a moment, he said indifferently, Seal his cultivation base and lock him up. Yes, master. Duanmu Shun grabbed Fan Xiuwen's shoulder. Fan Xiuwen was like a chick after being bound by the binding cage technique. He was carried out of the Great Hall by Duanmu Shang with a single arm. Since Zhou was not certain the binding cage car would last, he quickly ordered his disciple to seal Fan Xiuwen's cultivation base. He had time on his hands, so he'll use the various tricks in his arsenal to make Fan Xiuwen talk. Zhou was still lost in his thoughts when a female cultivator walked into the Great Hall. Pavilion Master, the Black Knights at the foot of the mountain are making a ruckus, refusing to leave. It was only natural that the Black Knights refused to leave since Fan Xiuwen, their leader, had been captured. When Zhou considered the palace's connection to them, he said nonchalantly, Fan Xiuwen is staying in the Evil Sky Pavilion. Tell those who have no business here to leave. He had used the word, staying, to tell those people that Fan Xiuwen was still alive. The female cultivator looked at Zhou timidly as she asked, but what if they still refuse to leave? Leave it to Ming-Shi. Understood. I'll inform Mr. Forth about this. At the foot of Golden Court Mountain, several hundred meters beyond the barrier, dozens of Black Knights were looking up at the Evil Sky Pavilion. Due to the barrier, they could only stomp their feet helplessly in frustration. Meanwhile, hidden nearby in the forest, an elegant man dressed in green robes was silently observing this. A person dressed in all black stood behind the green-clad man. The black-clad man asked respectfully, Senior, are we going to attack these people? The green-clad swordsman did not look at the black-clad man, who stood behind him. A smile bloomed on his face before he said, Tell your sect master that I have no intention of taking lives today. Tell him that I'm sorry. For some reason, when the black-clad man heard the word sorry, he took a step back in spite of himself. He said awkwardly, Senior, you killed the sword freak, Chen Wenjie, previously. Who's your next target? The green-clad swordsman gave the black-clad man a sideways glance, causing the black-clad man to retreat further. He was quite frightened, worried that the green-clad swordsman would say he was the next target. Don't worry, I've always been a gentle and polite person. Your sect master knows that well, the green-clad swordsman said indifferently. I'm just feeling pressured from your powerful aura, Senior. I hope you're not offended by this. The black-clad man's knees were knocking against each other at this moment. It's fine, the green-clad swordsman said gently. Thank you for passing on information for me these days. The black-clad man wiped the sweat off his face as he sighed in relief. The green-clad swordsman continued to say, If I ever plan to kill you, I'll let you know beforehand, my friend. He had clearly paused for a moment before he added the words, my friend. The black-clad man felt like crying. You plan to tell your target you're going to kill them before you kill them? He no longer dared to say anything. He only stood silently at the back. The green-clad swordsman continued observing the black knights. He shook his head and sighed before he said, Fan Shiowen, the leader of the Black Knights, has been in there for half a day. I doubt he'll be coming back out. As senior, won't you wait a little longer? It's boring. The green-clad swordsman turned around and left. After walking about 100 meters away into the forest, he disappeared into thin air. The black-clad man stumbled, nearly losing his footing. He heaved a long sigh. This mission will be the end of me. After he calmed down, he continued to observe the Black Knights. At this moment, he saw a person flying out of the barrier. The person circled above the Black Knights before he came to a halt. Evil Sky Pavilion's Mingxia Yin. No matter how well-trained the Black Knights were, they could not help but take several steps back under Mingxia Yin's intimidating aura. In the end, they could only helplessly leave the Golden Court Mountain. The black-clad man nodded to himself as he muttered under his breath, No wonder Senior Sword Devil left. Even Fan Shiowen, who has an 8-leaf avatar, is helpless against the Evil Sky Pavilion. The old villain is truly impressive. It did not take long before he left the forest as well. Evil Sky Pavilion. Zhou looked at his merit points on the system dashboard. He had 2,210 merit points left. The reward for capturing Fan Shiowen was much less compared to killing a nascent Divinity Tribulation Realm elite. I have 5 luck points. I did 2 draws previously, and all I got was a thank you and too bad message. Zhou considered it for a moment. Perhaps I should try again. After all, 3rd time's a charm. Lucky draw. Ding. Spent 50 merit points on a lucky draw. Thank you for participating. Luck +1. Zhou shook his head. He resisted the urge to make another draw. This is the same as refining a weapon. I have to be patient and wait for an opportunity. I can't let it get to my head. Name, Zhou. Race, human. Cultivation base, Brahmin C8 meridians. Merit points, 2,160. Avatar, Mighty 4 quadrants. Remaining life, 5,801 days. Item, Deadly Strike card X1, Impeccable card X2, Critical Block card X7 passive, Cage Bind X5, Witsard Bian. Weapon, Unnamed Amorous Hoop, Owner, Yi Qin Xin. Requires re-refining before use. Cultivation method, These Scrolls of Heavenly Writing. 5 Energy Universe costs 8,000 merit points. Zhou muttered to himself with a frown. He did not think he would have enough points even if he killed Fan Shiowen and the others. He sighed, and this is only the 5 Energy Universe. I'm certain the 6 recombinant trigram lines, 7 Star Soul, and 8 methods connected aren't any cheaper than the 5 Energy Universe. Zhou waved his arm, and the dashboard disappeared. There was no need to feel embarrassed about this. He was just starting out compared to Ji Tiandao, who had lived to almost a millennium. Hasty men don't get to eat hot tofu. At this moment, Mingxia Yin ran into the Great Hall and said, Master, I've locked our captives up. There won't be any problem, Master. When he saw Zhou was deep in thought, he quickly bowed, obviously trying to flatter Zhou. Perhaps Zhou was used to it. He did not feel particularly special. For all he cared, Ming Yin could flatter him forever. This fellow, I think he's possessed by Hushin. What's the matter? Zhou asked indifferently. Master, Fan Shouwen is stubbornly refusing to reveal the mastermind behind the Fish Dragon Village's incident. However, I have a suggestion. With a smile on his face, Ming Yin made a hammering motion. Zhou said, Fan Shouwen is the leader of the Black Knights. If he's capable of reaching that position, do you think your torture is enough to make him talk? Well, what if he refuses to talk? Ming Yin asked in confusion. There's no hurry. Zhou stood up slowly. He walked down the stairs with his hands on his back as he continued saying, the mastermind must be holding something over Fan Shouwen's head. Ming Yin asked tentatively, Are you planning to deal with the palace, Master? Zhou's expression was calm. He did not answer the question. Currently, the only person capable of obtaining information from the palace was Zhang Aijin, since he had access to the palace's archives. However, that was before Zhang Aijin left the palace. Now that he had left, it was unlikely that he would be able to access the palace's archives. Moreover, this matter was a tightly guarded secret. A thought suddenly appeared unbidden in Zhou's mind. What if the palace leaked the archive on purpose to use the Evil Sky Pavilion and the Black Knights as pawns? After thinking about it, he called out, Ming Yin. Yes, Master. I'll leave interrogating Fan Shouwen to you, Zhou said with a wave of his hand. Ming Yin replied respectfully, Yes, Master. I'll interrogate this person thoroughly and find out the mastermind behind the incident as soon as I can. After saying that, he paused for a moment before he continued to say, Master, Fan Shouwen is such a powerful person. The 2 Dark Knights we imprisoned are also elites. I've just entered the nascent divinity tribulation recently, and I don't even have a suitable weapon. Would you